Welcome in Saturday afternoon. It's time for the Brock Purdy efficiency check-in. I've had this requested by several people because obviously we've been tracking a lot of quarterback play for the 49ers over the course of the past several seasons. Now they're on their third starter of the season. He's been impressive through 3 games, 2 starts, and 1 essentially full game against the Dolphins. And the thoughts now are, where exactly does this guy fit in as far as the numbers go, right? The objective numbers versus just the feel and the eye test. Because what Purdy has done from the feel perspective and from the eye test perspective has certainly been really impressive, especially considering the fact that he played the game on Thursday night against the Seattle Seahawks hurt, that he didn't throw a single pass until he did so during the walkthrough at the hotel ballroom the morning of the game. So Purdy showed up, delivered 17 of 26 for the 49ers, some hyper efficient play, especially early in that game when he went 11 of 11. There have been some missed passes over the past couple weeks. There have been some near disasters, but Purdy has generally gotten away with them, which is really good for him, really good for the 49ers. The one against the Seahawks was the near interception, what should have been an interception to Quandre Diggs. Obviously, the week before against the Buccaneers, there was an interception nullified by a defensive holding penalty, and obviously the roughing the passer penalty on the first play blitz from Tampa Bay. But all in all, Brock Purdy has delivered efficiently. And even though he's gotten away with the few, maybe the 49ers deserved a few karmic breaks on the quarterback front, considering the fact that they've already had 2 starting quarterbacks go down with injury this season. So in our efficiency check-in, let's see exactly where Brock Purdy is through 3 games. Now, you have to remember that this is still a small sample size. I put this at a minimum of 100 plays because Purdy only has 113 dropbacks this season. So his dot's going to be really small on the XY axis, with X being the accuracy, completion percentage over expectation, and Y being efficiency, which is going to be the more important metric to evaluate his play within the context of Kyle Shanahan's scheme. Sample size is determined by dot size here. So Patrick Mahomes, top right, where you want to be, has a massive dot because he's taken all those snaps for Kansas City. Jimmy Garoppolo, medium-sized dot, not as many dropbacks for the 49ers, and obviously he's been out now with injury. And here you have Brock Purdy with the small dot. But what really, just should stand out to you in our first overarching cursory look is that Purdy and Garoppolo have dots in a similar spot. Jimmy Garoppolo was a little bit more efficient and a little bit more accurate than Brock Purdy. But, all this talk about Brock Purdy and Jimmy Garoppolo being a similar type of quarterback rings through in their efficiency and their accuracy results. Within Kyle Shanahan's scheme, Brock Purdy and Jimmy Garoppolo are indeed a similar type of quarterback. Now, of course, there are differences between the two, and that's what we're going to be talking about. I think Purdy might actually have more upside due to the fact that he has more speed than Jimmy Garoppolo, but obviously the experience department has favored Jimmy Garoppolo, which is why his dot is a little bit higher. But why don't we just go through everything here, talk about realistic expectations for Brock Purdy moving forward as far as where he might end up on this efficiency chart. So far, the simple statistics for Brock Purdy: 67% completion rate, 7.3 yards per attempt, 6 touchdowns, 2 picks. One of the picks, though, came against garbage time against Kansas City. I'm just reading off his entire stat line from this 2022 rookie season. As of late, Purdy has thrown only 1 official pick, although there have been some more turnover-worthy throws. And that's my big question for Brock Purdy. Can he avoid regression in the turnover department? Because look at this. So far, Brock Purdy has been wildly efficient for a rookie starter. This, to me, blew me away when I saw this. This is the top 10 quarterbacks in EPA per play. This is efficiency rankings over the past 2 seasons, so 2021 and 2022. I set the minimum to qualify at 113 dropbacks because that's how many Purdy has. Everybody else has at least 859. Tua has 859. Jimmy Garoppolo has 877. This is an impressive list to crack from Brock Purdy, and I don't care if he only has 113 dropbacks. EPA per play is going to measure how productive the offense is in a more advanced way than just standard yards or standard points. while somebody's on the field. It's going to take into account 5-yard gains on 2nd and 3 versus a 6-yard gain on 3rd and 8, right? You'd rather have the 5-yard gain on 2nd and 3 than the 6-yard gain on 3rd and 8. It means a little bit more, maybe a lot more, because of down and distance situations. But you've got Mahomes at the top. Mahomes is like the MJ of this era. He's at the top of all these quarterback lists. Obviously, we've talked so many times about Jimmy Garoppolo delivering his best season this year and being really good last year. He's been really efficient at number 2. The other guys you have on this list, Burrow, Josh Allen, Jalen Hurts, Tua Tagovailoa, Dak Prescott, Tom Brady, Aaron Rodgers. I mean, you got a few future Hall of Famers on this list. I think if you look at the list as far as future Hall of Famers go, Mahomes is going to be in there, Brady's going to be in there, Rodgers is going to be in there, and it's not a bad bet on some of these other guys. So Brock Purdy is in his efficiency start has been awesome. Number 3 on a list of a lot of big names. And obviously, I said when Purdy took over, it's going to be really hard to match Jimmy Garoppolo's level of efficiency. And that holds true. It obviously is really hard to match Jimmy Garoppolo's level of efficiency. But the fact that Purdy's number 3 behind only the numbers that Garoppolo and Mahomes have put up this year, that's the story of the year in the National Football League. The fact that a 7th-round pick, a rookie, yes, Mr. Irrelevant on top of that, is the 3rd starting quarterback for the San Francisco 49ers this year, and he's been able to walk in and deliver the kind of efficiency. It's better than Burrow, better than Allen, Hurts, Tagovailoa, Prescott, Brady, and Rodgers over his first 113 snaps. That's a great story. Now, can Purdy avoid regression in the turnover department? That is the key, because look, even if we zoom this out, this is zoomed out to over the course of the past 5 seasons since 2017. Yeah, this is since 2017. Purdy still hangs in there well with a lot of other big names. Rivers is on there now. Drew Brees retired on there. A lot more Hall of Famers now for sure, right? Mahomes, Brees. I don't know where Rivers ends up. Tom Brady, Aaron Rodgers, Andrew Luck obviously cut his career a little bit short. Joe Burrow's on there. I mean, if we want to quantify exactly how good Purdy's start has been from an efficiency perspective, it's extremely impressive. But the question that I put up there is, can he avoid regression in the turnover department? Because, if he throws another ball like the one that Diggs should have intercepted, if there is no holding call against Tampa Bay, if those kind of things start turning into actual picks, then Purdy's efficiency is going to go down. Now, if those things turn into picks, but Purdy also becomes more and more comfortable within the scheme of Kyle Shanahan's offense, and maybe he starts making some other throws instead. We've seen him miss a couple, right, to Brandon Ayuk a little earlier in the game against Seattle. He's missed a couple shorter ones on the screen passes. So if he gets a little bit more accurate, the more comfortable he gets, perhaps his upside will outweigh some increased mistakes, just if turnover regression, giveaway regression does at least hit. And, for that, I have to say this right here. Why don't we take a look at this graphic? Because this one was given to me by Tej Seth, who does such a great job of covering the NFL from an analytic perspective. I have to make this a little bit bigger so you can go ahead and see the bottom. Garoppolo is gray and Purdy is red. Tej Seth, who, his analytics coverage is awesome. He makes all these cool graphs that we can actually visualize efficiency through. So this is a bootstrapping model, which shows you Purdy in red and Garoppolo in gray. And the x-axis going from left to right is EPA per play. So the further to the right, the more color you have on the right means the more explosive or the more efficient you are. Further to the left, that means that those are outcomes that are less efficient. And then the vertical axis is percentage of the time that you hit on any specific outcome. The average line right here is just a vertical, basically the y-axis. And as you can see, Garoppolo's in gray. Jimmy Garoppolo his range of outcomes is firmly on the above average side. So what this is telling us is that relative to other quarterbacks, Jimmy Garoppolo has been very consistent. It looks like damn close to 95% of the time is going to give you a positive EPA outcome. But his efficiency is limited to this steep drop-off. Jimmy Garoppolo's efficiency is limited to this very U-shaped, and it's a very sharp U-shaped curve. Brock Purdy, meanwhile, is in the red. And as you can see, Purdy, the red extends further into the negative, but also further into the positive. So what can we grab from that? Well, we can say this right here. Purdy so far has a lower floor. Here you can see the lower floor for Brock Purdy. There's a higher percentage of outcomes that have stretched into the lower EPA, but a higher ceiling than Jimmy Garoppolo. So here you can see over on the right side, a higher percentage of outcomes than Jimmy Garoppolo have extended to the very, very positive as far as EPA goes. So what does that mean? What does lower floor, higher ceiling for Brock Purdy mean? How did that come to be? What are some theories? How does this, really affect the 49ers process moving forward? What can we expect realistically from Brock Purdy moving forward? Well, lower floor for Brock Purdy comes from less experience. Yes, he's got 4 years of FBS experience. That makes Purdy obviously better in the now than Trey Lance was. Trey Lance's efficiency was nowhere near where Garoppolo's and Purdy's is. So obviously Purdy is more ready-made coming out of college with those 4 years of FBS experience. But he still is new to the NFL, and we still have seen some erratic accuracy, I think, on some of the screen passes, the shorter game. Obviously, we will see if some of that and some of those mistakes end up biting Purdy. He's generally gotten away with the interception level, the turnover level mistakes, right? But the floor definitely has been lower just because he's not leveraging an NFL offense as efficiently as a multi-year veteran. That shouldn't be surprising. But at the same time, Brock Purdy, and we'll bust this back open, Brock Purdy has a higher ceiling than Jimmy Garoppolo, and the ceiling is illustrated over here. There's more red than gray beyond this drop-off for Jimmy Garoppolo. And where does that higher ceiling come from for Brock Purdy? Well, Brock Purdy is faster than Jimmy Garoppolo. So we can say that, okay, these guys are similar quarterbacks. They both have the quick release. They, both like throwing the passes that set up yards after the catch, which is a prerequisite for this offense because there's a lot of weapons that like to run after the catch. That's the way that Shanahan has set it up. We could say all these things about how similar Purdy and Garoppolo are. By the way, it's really interesting. Garoppolo's average depth of target this year, 6.9 yards. Purdy's is 6.1 yards. Both of those numbers on the lower end of quarterbacks. So Purdy's throwing shorter than Garoppolo. That means, it just shows you they're both playing within the same system, though. Kyle Shanahan is trying to set up a system in which yards after the catch is accentuated. But, similarities aside, we talk about the differences. And one of the reasons that I think that Brock Purdy has a higher ceiling than Jimmy Garoppolo is because he's faster than Jimmy Garoppolo. And one thing that people don't realize, I was on a radio interview yesterday, and the hosts were shocked when I pointed this out. Brock Purdy's 10-yard split time ranks in the 95th percentile of the typical quarterback. So Brock Purdy's measurables aren't great across the board except for in one spot, the 10-yard split. He's got an uncanny burst, and that shows up on the football field. So he's able to roll out. He's able to run. 49ers can afford to call more bootlegs for Brock Purdy because they like that speed. He can get out of the pocket. He can create some plays off schedule after the initial pocket breaks down. And to me, that, I've watched these games. We've watched the tape. To me, that explains this. To me, that explains why there's more red on the right side here, why Brock Purdy has a higher ceiling than Jimmy Garoppolo. So the inexperience, the fact that he's a rookie explains why he has a lower floor than Jimmy Garoppolo. The higher, at least over the first 113 dropbacks, this right side, that comes from, the explanation from that is that Brock Purdy is a little bit more athletic than Jimmy Garoppolo. And therefore, you have a larger range of outcomes for the rookie than the veteran, which is something that probably isn't all too surprising. But I think, the one thing that might be surprising is the right side, the higher ceiling. People weren't sure what to expect from Brock Purdy until they saw him play. The entire league probably wasn't sure, including the 49ers of that right side, because they waited until the very last pick of the draft to select him. They knew that he played the position well. They know that Brock Purdy uses his eyes effectively to manipulate defenses. They know that he's extremely smart, that he could fit within Kyle Shanahan's offense, all this good stuff. But he would have been drafted earlier than the 7th round if there was more belief in his upside. And I think the biggest thing about Brock Purdy that we've learned so far that is knew that we probably couldn't have learned until he actually played was that that upside is real, and it's based on that crazy 10-yard split that showed up obviously in his testing numbers, but is also showing up on tape. Purdy can move a bit, and I've talked to 49ers players who tell me that he throws on the run better than any other 49ers quarterback, and that includes obviously the other two, Trey Lance and Jimmy Garoppolo. So that opens up a higher potential upside for the 49ers offense because Shanahan can start calling those bootlegs. Shanahan can rely on his quarterback to start doing some stuff a little bit off schedule. Purdy might not sprint 40 yards downfield for a touchdown, but if he can move 5 yards to reset the pocket and then fire downfield to somebody like Deebo Samuel, like we saw in the Tampa Bay game, or if he can move around a little bit and then find Christian McCaffrey further down the field or George Kittle as an outlet, well, that might be a little bit more than Jimmy Garoppolo has been able to do. Garoppolo, of course, I think he showed some escapability, especially back in 2017 before the ACL tear. There was a lot of that from Garoppolo. This year against Arizona, Mexico City, we saw more of it again from Jimmy Garoppolo. That was impressive, but Purdy is demonstrably faster, and that is the big, big deal for the 49ers this year, because as long as Jimmy Garoppolo is unavailable, who knows if he comes back for the playoffs, or, I mean, what has it been? It's going to be 2 weeks since the foot injury, right? So in a week or two, we'll start to know more about how the fracture is healing. So this won't become a question until the playoffs, but then you start running the calculus of, okay, who's going to be the more efficient option right now? And it's always been an outside hope that Jimmy Garoppolo would be fully healthy for the playoffs, right? We talk about that 6 to 8 week timeline. That's what he's on. That's what we're waiting on. But you don't know how a fracture is going to heal until it actually hits a milestone mark in the healing process. And that's probably still a couple weeks away. So this isn't a question about who the 49ers are going to play in the playoffs right now. It's still a week at a time thing. This is more of a question of setting realistic expectations for Brock Purdy. And for me, the big question for Purdy is, will he trend toward the lower floor or the higher ceiling? Because we know that he's got the higher ceiling, but we also know that he's got the lower floor. And Tej Seth's model right here illustrates it perfectly. Again, for those of you just joining, EPA is on the x-axis, and the y-axis is percentage of time that a certain outcome is attained. So you would like to be further to the right with all of this. Further to the right with all of this. And Purdy is further to the right, but he's not there as often as Jimmy Garoppolo. He's got more red to the left, and he's got more red to the right. So the big question moving forward is, will Purdy trend toward the lower floor or the higher ceiling? That's what we need to know. And I think the 49ers believe that they can get him trending toward the higher ceiling, but NFL defenses are going to have something to say about that. They're going to be able to throw mixed coverages at Brock Purdy. They're going to be able to throw more coverage drops at Brock Purdy. In fact, I mean, maybe the best 49ers defense that the 49ers under Purdy will play here in the regular season is coming on Saturday. Washington ranked number 9 in DVOA. They are a good pass rushing team, right? They could come off the edge in a hurry. They might be able to get some pressure on Brock Purdy, rushing only 4. And they're generally more healthy on the defensive end than another good defense like Tampa Bay was last week, right? Tampa Bay last week was missing both safeties, including Antoine Winfield Jr., and Purdy was able to dice them up over the middle of the field. So every successive week is going to bring a bigger test. And maybe I shouldn't say successive week, because the test against the Seattle Seahawks was a different test. It was a defense ranked in the 20s, but it was a road test, and Purdy handled it really well with the noise. But now they're going to be back home, and it's going to be a different test against an even higher ranked defense than the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in Washington. So with each test that Purdy passes, the more faith he can give the people who follow the 49ers and are making decisions, he can instill more faith that he can live on the right side of this chart. And maybe he could tighten up this chart, this bootstrapping chart. Maybe he could tighten it a little bit up so it looks a little bit more consistent like Jimmy Garoppolo's. Narrow here means consistency. Wide here means a greater range of outcomes. And that's what we're looking at for Brock Purdy right now with the lower floor and the higher ceiling. So we'll see. I think the key for Purdy is right here. I think the key is avoiding regression in the turnover department. If you can avoid regression in the turnover department, then you can keep the efficiency numbers high. And by high efficiency numbers, this is what I mean. These are QBs over the last 5 years since Shanahan took over the 49ers in EPA per play. Mahomes, the number 1, any which way you cut it. Drew Brees, now retired, number 2. Jimmy Garoppolo, number 3. Again, do not discount what Jimmy Garoppolo's been able to do for the 49ers. When he's been healthy, he's been one of the most efficient in the league, and that's a huge deal. Rivers, oh, there's Brock Purdy, number 5. Deshaun Watson playing right now. Tom Brady, Aaron Rodgers, Aaron Rodgers, Andrew Luck, and Joe Burrow. If you just zoom in on the past 2 years, this is 2021, 2022, Mahomes, Garoppolo, Purdy, 1, 2, 3. So can Purdy keep it up behind 100, but beyond 113 dropbacks? That's the key. Can he keep it up beyond 113? Because so far, I think we've seen indications that he can, and we've seen some indications that he might regress, right? Purdy has gotten away with some potentially disastrous plays. Let's put it that way. The potential pick to Diggs, the first play against Tampa Bay could have changed a lot of things. That was called a personal foul when he didn't see the blitz. And the interception before halftime against Tampa Bay that was nullified by defensive holding. In the long run, every single one of those mistakes will not be nullified. Let's put it that way. So far, all 3 of those mistakes, 3 out of 3 have been nullified against Brock Purdy due to penalty or due to a dropped interception. There are going to be rough patches. That's part of developing in the NFL. It's not fair to Brock Purdy to expect him to come in and continue this type of play, number 3 efficiency in the NFL as a rookie indefinitely. Jimmy Garoppolo, his first 5 games of the 49ers was even more efficient than all of this. He would have been at the top of this list. Obviously, his efficiency came back down to earth a little bit, but I mean, it was a good indicator for Jimmy Garoppolo over the long run, right? Jimmy Garoppolo over the long run over the last 5 years has been number 3. So the fact that Brock Purdy has started as hot as he has is a really good, promising sign for the 49ers. But there are usually no stories, and I shouldn't say usually, there's never a story of an NFL quarterback going through a career without any real hiccups. And when those real hiccups come, can Brock Purdy stay closer to his ceiling that he's demonstrated already, or is he going to be closer to the floor? That is the operative question moving forward. All right, hope you've enjoyed this Brock Purdy efficiency check-in. We'll be talking much more about this. Other news today, man, the Minnesota Vikings, the Indianapolis Colts really blew that one. That was crazy. It was 33-0 at halftime. The Vikings come all the way back, tied at 36, win 39-36. So the 49ers remain a game behind Minnesota for the number 3 and for the number 2 seed. The 49ers are number 3. My question, it's still, are the Vikings frauds? And all the numbers indicate that they are. I think watching them play indicates that they are. They're 11-3 now with like a DVOA in the 20s. So I think that there's a good chance that Minnesota loses one of its final 3 games, because it took them that much just to beat the Colts, who are objectively bad this year. So against the New York Giants in Minnesota for the Vikings, then they go to Green Bay and Chicago, 2 cold weather outdoor road games in January. There is a very good chance that Minnesota loses once more, and that's what the 49ers would need, assuming they win all 3 of their games against teams that are inferior. If the 49ers get that Minnesota loss plus their 3 wins, they will be the number 2 seed, and they'll be in line to play the divisional round at home as well. But for the 49ers, they thought that Minnesota would drop this one. I thought they'd drop this one. Again, it was 33-0 at halftime. It was the largest comeback in NFL history. But somehow, some way, the Vikings, who I think very clearly are not as good as their record based on all of this, one possession stuff that's happening with them this year, they were able to beat a really bad Colts team 39-36. All right. Hope you've enjoyed the Brock Purdy efficiency check-in. We will talk to everyone soon. Purdy, so impressive, near the top of the league. Number 3 in efficiency over the course of this season and last year. If you compare him with all the quarterbacks who qualify in that regard, that's really promising for the 49ers. And now we get to see what's next. We get the kickback, watch the results trickle in as Purdy counter adjusts to the league's adjustments. His 4th game in is going to be a fun one against Washington a week from now, next Saturday. All right, everybody take care. Have a good Saturday night. No 49ers football this weekend. We already saw it on Thursday, so you're going to have to pass the time in a different way. Everybody take care.